of the frontline presidential candidates in the 2023 general elections in Nigeria have given a preview of their plans for the country if elected president. Speaking at the first leg of the Arise Presidential Town Hall series in Abuja on Sunday, were a former governor of Kano State and presidential candidate of the new Nigeria's People's Party, Rabiu Kwankwaso, a former governor of Anambra State and presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, and the governor of Delta State and vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Ifeanyi Okowa. Okowa stood in for the PDP presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar. The fourth presidential candidate that participated in the Arise Presidential Town Hall series was Mr. Kola Abiola of the People's Redemption Party. The Presidential Town Hall series was, however, focused on two issues: security and the economy.
Ladies and gentlemen, if that there was a failure of intelligence processing, because before that incident happened, from information available, there were already indications of insecurity within that rail corridor, as well as previous attempts and intelligence that were ignored. So there was a failure of processing and giving due attention to intelligence, which I would have promptly dealt with. Two, when it happened, government action and communication were weak. If I was commander-in-chief, we would have acted swiftly, and throughout that process, would have remained in communication and at least showing consistent empathy to the families of those that are involved. We would have done it differently. And I think that shows the overall need for us to improve the intelligence processing and giving to an immediate response whenever such situation arises.
As former Minister of Defense, I can assure you that the situation wouldn't have been allowed. I am sure you remember that recently we unveiled our blueprint. And in our blueprint, we made it very clear that the number of the military that we have today, which is about 250,000, is grossly inadequate. And therefore, we have made adequate arrangement to have about 1 million military, Army, Air Force, and Navy. And with that, we believe we are going to take over every square meter of our land in this country. Police, 230,000 at the moment. We want to also make it to about 1 million. Put together with the SSS, civil defense, and other security agencies, within a very short period of time, we should be able to be in charge of our land. We will be very willing to sit down with anybody. Anybody who has grudges in any part of the country, our government will sit down with them and dialogue. At the end of the day, anybody who decides to think otherwise, definitely the law will take its course. And that is why we have made a provision that we are going to build facilities, military depots, expand the existing ones. And of course, there is a provision in the blueprint to say that even the NYSC, which is of course 1 year, will continue, but the provision has been done for those who are interested in joining the military and the other security agencies.
There's a need to go back and address our security defense architecture. Over the years, there's been a lot of talk about reviewing that, making it get better. But is that really the question? The fact of the matter is that if I'm right, since 1999, the National Security Council has not sat for one day since 1999. And that is the body that governs dispassionately the security situation in Nigeria. That body has not sat since 1999. It's always been us going out of our architecture to run defense and run security. And that's why the whole thing has collapsed to date. We need to go back and address that. We keep talking about faults in the system, but the truth of the matter is that we have never actually implemented the system itself. At PRP, we intend to go back, look at that system, and make it work the way it should work. That's number one. Number two, a lot of us, we tell ourselves, yes, we have a shortfall in security personnel, be it the military, be it the police. But really, if you think back and look at it, and you look at all the structures outside of the police, outside of the security systems we have, by the time you pull them together, you have an immediate manpower that in the short run can solve the problem immediately.
Actually, that we need a very coordinated intelligence gathering, and we must also find ways of operationalizing it in such a manner that all the security agencies are able to have a shared intelligence and to also work collectively for the collective good of Nigeria. That apparently is not happening at the moment. I'm a governor and I can see it and I see what is going on. So we need to ensure that there's a coordinated arrangement among the security agencies. There is also no doubt that with the level of insecurity, it's not that train incident is just one. There are several instances across Nigeria taking place at the same time. So obviously we need more boots on the ground. There's no doubt about that. That would definitely require more persons. But the approach to it with the pen, yes, add some more. But in the medium term, we must be looking at evolving the police force such that the states should be able to have their own police and operationalize their own police. It's very important because these people, because they are working within their own environment, are in a better position to have a clearer understanding of their areas and to know exactly what to do at every point in time. Before, people thought of several other things, but as at today, it's obvious that a lot of people are calling for it because just one centralized police force is not able to attend to all the issues that we have.
Joining us now to discuss the presidential candidate submissions as Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso and Abiola lay out their agendas at the Arise Presidential Town Hall Series are the Executive Director of Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, Auwal Rafsanjani, and Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi. Great to have you both on Newsday. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Dr. Amadi, let me start with you. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the town hall meeting, I'd like to have a brief assessment of the performance of the candidates. Was there anyone out of them that was able to wow you? What were the main takeaways for you?
Well, first, it started looking like badly because of the confusion and some of the disruption, but ended as a grand night in my view. In terms of general performance, I think it was a high quality, considering how politicians deal with or come out in this kind of situation. One of the surprises was, of course, Abiola, Kukola Abiola, who I didn't know much about, but it seems to me that had many strong, great ideas about the future. And very important, he aligned well with the PRP traditional politics, looking more around social democracy, speaking those sound bites, reading out policies and perceptions that align with the center of the left of the center politics. So he came out well. I mean, people see him relatively as a weaker, but for me, he overperformed. There's a discount on him before now, and he did very well. it seems to me that in terms of articulation, Okowa scored highest. In terms, in my view, he came out very well. He was very eloquent. He was very good. You know, he showed skills of perception and comprehension, and was able to come off as somebody who has good understanding of the policy issues. Also, Kwankwaso did very well because he enlivened the discussion with some good humor, you know, the bantering, and apart from the fact that he gave credibility to some of his programs with human capital development, education particularly. If you look at relative terms, maybe will be underperformed because essentially people expect so much from him. But he compensated with authenticity. His stories around what he did at Anambra were very always charming and interesting. So, in my view, it was a great night because some of these politicians dared for the first time with much extended conversation around their policy. The bad side of it was, the question I asked around structural crisis of the economy, and the benefit of it was too hard. It showed that in spite of their brilliance and articulacy, they needed more work to be done in terms of getting the rigor. You know, it showed to me that they were not really, the absence of strong policy teams advising and looking at these issues from much more structural and strategic point of view is weak. So what come out, any of these guys could be a great president. I mean, this collection is better than any we've had in the last 3 elections I've monitored closely. Better than 2015, better than 2019. Any of these guys will be a better president than what we have now. But look, what we're still missing is that robust policy framework to enable transformation. But I could go to bed and say, if any of these 4 guys won the election, we have a starting point, a takeoff point for what could be a better government. But great night, Okowa stood out in terms of being more articulate, but I think both Obi and Kola and Kwankwaso, they all gave good account of themselves as very high quality presidential material.
All right, thanks for that, Dr. Amadi. We actually saw you yesterday asking questions at the town hall meeting, so well done there. Let's move on to Auwal. I want to throw the same question to you. What are the major takeaways from the discussion on the economy and security, and also the very glaring absences? But let's rush that because we're very short on time.
Thank you very much. Let me also share the same opinion with Dr. Sam Amadi. Actually, when you look at the presidential candidates, all of them, they have actually fairly performed very well. I think, looking at all the contribution and the ideas they brought, if we really practicalize that, definitely we will have we will really move forward in terms of addressing insecurity. Of course, there are other areas that I thought maybe perhaps they should, pay more attention to it, which is looking at the enablers of, the insecurity. The enablers of insecurity have not been addressed by all of them, and I think that is one of the major problems that we have. People perpetuate these atrocities and get away with it, no sanction, no penalty, and it becomes like an incentive for other people to do. So I think the presidential aspirant did not touch, on those areas. Then, of course, Kola, to some extent, he has talked about corruption in the procurement, in the security procurement, which is one of the major troubling areas that we also have. I think if you look at, the performance of all of them, it appears that they have fair idea on how to really deal with issues of insecurity. And we know that the major crisis that we have that is leading the insecurity in the country, has to be addressed seriously. Issues of bad governance, there's no way you can address issues of insecurity if the bad governance continue to happen at local, state, and national level. Issues of poverty, extreme poverty, is also what is making some people to have incentives to engage in, extreme violence in this country. Issues of terrorism is also part of it. People recruit them, give them food, just ordinary food. is what some people are using to recruit some people to commit or to be part of the terror attack. Then you also have the unemployment that a lot of our young people have finished university, roaming around, in fact, some have finished school 15 years, 20 years. They are roaming around, no job. Now, so it is easy for them to be recruited into such kind of thing. Our porous border, that up to now, I don't understand what custom, what DSS, what police, what immigration are doing, that it is through these borders that all these terrible weapons are coming. If you look at the kind of arms Boko Haram is using, which in some extent, some people are even saying are more superior than to some of our own, security men. How did they come? They are not manufactured in Nigeria. Where were they when all these things are coming? So I think our porous border need to be looked into, which I think the presidential aspirant, to some extent, they have highlighted that, but I think we need to pay more attention. Also, the issue of, ethnic, religious, and other geographical sentiment that people are using to, sustain even the terror in the country need to be dealt with. We cannot compromise our safety and security because we want to protect someone who has committed crime against the nation and against the people, simply because we want to just, be nice to him or nice to her. I think, they needed to have also come out very clear. And in terms of really practical solution, this whole extreme violence that, we are having, even though the current administration has tried to develop an agenda in terms of counter-terrorism, counter-violence extremism in the country, but it hasn't simply been really, effectively worked, and therefore I expect the presidential aspirant to also pick up on some of the policy that we have and show the lapses that we have, and to commit themselves to how they can be able to improve on that. Human and infrastructural development. Of course, Konkoso has mentioned about education, appropriate education actually, because if you don't have appropriate education, then you will also educate people to go and be engaging and believing that when they die, in the course of doing good, which in reality is not that. So we need to do a lot to educate people, and the presidential aspirant, I expect them to also highlight areas where they can actually do that. Again, the law enforcement, I think one of the presidential aspirants talk about the coordination and the use of the intelligence to be able to process effective protection for the people, because one of the problems is that it's not that we don't have intelligence. The intelligence agencies, they do their work, but the political actors, they don't take into consideration those reports. Yes.
So sorry to interrupt you, but we are really trying to manage our time. Dr. Amadi, if I understood you clearly, you said Okowa's performance stood out for you. And of course, you said it would ensure a private sector-driven economy. But I'm sure you'll recall that Atiku Abubakar chaired the National Council on Privatization under former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And of course, years later, we know how well or how well not that has worked. So what's the guarantee that this will succeed if he does become president in 2023?
Absolutely. So if it was a debate, somebody can now take him on authenticity. You see, the point is not about what you say. It's not about whether it's credible. Now, let me put it this way. Now, Okowa came out top in terms of brilliance, articulacy, but it didn't come out top in terms of believability. So two things here are different. So you said things, then people go back and say, wait a minute, you did this X, Y, Z. It didn't show you could do it. So for me, he was brilliant in the things he said. But authenticity, I'll give one example. Now, when Konkoso talk about education, he underlines it with what he has done in Kano, the schools. When we talk about prudence and anti-corruption, he underlines it with the story and says, look, I did not collect one kokobo. I did not put anybody from my family. So they carry authenticity. So in a debate, you may be the most brilliant, but you didn't move the needle because people didn't believe that you would do a better job. So yes, when I say he came out top, I'm assessing it from the point of view of who was more articulate, who punched the check the list in terms of what they said. But then the question is, going back home as a voter, I would say, but out of these guys, who do I believe can do this job? I look at their profile, I look at their program, I look at what I've done before. So essentially, and by the way, Okowa wasn't on the ballot. He's not on the ballot as president. So the fact that he did very well does not necessarily translate that people will we credit him with Atiku with that marks.
Well,
that was why
right
it was
then.
unfortunate that both Atiku and Tinubu didn't show up.
Dr.
So
Sam Amadi, I really apologize for
interrupting.
interrupting you. We are out of time. It is a great conversation. Hopefully it's something we can pick back up as the week progresses. Thank you so much, Auwal and Dr. Amadi, for joining us.